could I please ask you to leave the room?
Oh.
Thank you. I'll just sit outside here.
Yeah. Okay, we're going on third application in Horsford. It's application to seek full planning permission for the erection of 3 self-build dwellings. And we have Ellie Yarnham, who's presenting. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. So as just stated, this application is for 3 custom self-build dwellings, which has been submitted in full planning permission off Buxton Road in Horsted. So I'll just run through some slides for introducing it. So this aerial imagery kind of shows the site's position on Buxton Road, forming that kind of open, wider field boundaries. And you see I don't know if you can see the cursor just on the screen. You've got kind of built form in this location in the main part of the Horsted village. There are residential properties to the east and the west, and beyond this the landscape transitions into open countryside. So just a more zoomed in version of that aerial imagery. So the red outline shows the application boundary, including the proposed spur leading down to the attenuation basin at the rear of the site. There is, as I say, the site does sit within the gap of 2 dwellings, which is forming what is currently a soft rural edge into Horsted. You can see just on that slide where those 2 dwellings are to the east and the west. Moving on to the site plan, I've got the overall site plan on the left hand side and just a more zoomed in version of the dwellings to be constructed on the right hand side. So the scheme proposes 3 2-storey dwellings positioned in that linear arrangement parallel to Buxton Road. The front boundary hedge is going to be, as proposed, removed and part replaced, so transplanted back into the site, with a new footpath to be installed across the frontage. That attenuation pond is proposed at the southern end of the site, and details of those we don't have, but they could come forward by condition if required. Just moving on to the elevations, I know there's quite a few on there. They're very similar in form to one another, but as they are true self-build, custom-build properties, they have been designed by the individual occupiers. In the report it says that we haven't received any information on who would be occupying them. We now have got that information, so we are now happy that these can be self and custom-build dwellings. So the materials do differ between the plots, and that is again due to that self-build nature, but they do remain broadly reflective of the palette of the area. So just to walk around the site, in the site and out of the site. So they kind of demonstrate where I'm stood as a kind of informal lay-by on Buxton Road, looking into the site. At the minute you can see that hedge and that kind of the kind of winter feel of it, where it's lost lots of its leaves. And so I'll move through, you can kind of see where that soft transition lies. So again, this is then looking back out onto Buxton Road. This is mainly a view of that hedge, which is proposed to be transplanted back further, roughly to about where I was stood. So just some more images. Appreciate they are a little bit dark on this screen, but say this shows further down to the south with that open landscape feel. And then just walking down further the site, I'm now roughly halfway down that field, looking back on the hedgerow and then looking south. You can just make out the water tower, which is approximately there on that right hand side in that distance. So again, just a more zoomed up version of that hedge at the front, which is to be transplanted back. So that's the wrong slide, that's the wrong application. Ignore that previous slide, apologies. Again, just the hedgerow, more from Buxton Road. So in terms of the overall site, I've got the site layout plan on the screen, which shows where those 3 dwellings are to be positioned in against the attenuation basin at the back. And then the last slide will be just the key planning policies and the key considerations, which I will run through with you as well. So the principle of the development. So the site does lie outside of that settlement boundary for Horsted. Therefore, it is not. It's contrary to policy GC2 of the local plan. It also does not meet policy 7.5 of the Greater Norwich local plan for self-build sites, as the land and the site is not immediately adjacent the existing development boundary. That is located a few houses down the road, and that is based on previous appeals that we have received in the one in the South Norfolk area, which said as there is not because there are dwellings intervening in between, that can't be considered adjacent to. Despite it being adjacent the built form, it's not adjacent the defined development boundary. Okay, so in terms of the landscape and visual impact, the field contributes to that soft rural edge and the soft transition from that built up area to the rural area. This is emphasised by a 2016 appeal decision on the site, and I appreciate that is some nearly 10 years ago since the 2017 appeal was dismissed. And say this in here was concerned about that character and appearance of that area, because this field does form a soft transition from the built up area into the rural area of Horsted. So this proposal has been originally submitted as 5 dwellings, which was reduced to 3 throughout the negotiation of the application with the former case officer. So by placing the 3 dwellings on here, obviously reduces the overall kind of impact of the 5 built form dwellings. However, there are still concerns over that built form on this open and rural landscape character of the area, given that it is in that rural area, and taking into account the previous appeal decision on the site. And by way of background as well, there was a previous planning decision in approximately 2021, which was recommended for refusal at planning committee. The committee members did agree with that, and then the application was withdrawn prior to that being issued. Therefore, they were not able to appeal that decision. In terms of its design and character, whilst the individual dwelling designs on scale are acceptable, it's the overall impact on that character and appearance of that built form which is harmful to the overall character of the area. In terms of residential amenity, the layouts and spacing provide acceptable separation distances for both future occupiers and existing neighbours, and there are no significant concerns identified. In terms of highways, Norfolk County Council were consulted on the proposal and raised no objections, subject to a number of conditions. In terms of trees and ecology, there are no objections from the tree officer or ecology officer, and then these are also subject to conditions. However, in terms of biodiversity net gain, because the site is over 0.5 hectares, an exemption for self-build does not apply, and therefore the site is liable for BNG. We do not have any information on that. There's a reason for refusal in terms of number 4 for that reason. In terms of flood risk and drainage, the site is within flood zone 1 with a low risk of flooding from seas, etc. There is a surface water strategy which is acceptable in principle, but these details would be required if we were to go any further with it. So in terms of the reasons for refusal, we have reason for refusal 1 on that impact on the character and appearance of that area. 2 is because we don't have the mitigation in place for nutrient neutrality. Now, on a side of that, Natural England have accepted an off-site mitigation proposal that has been submitted by the applicants. However, without the signed Section 106 agreement having that mitigation in place, we have to say there is insufficient information at this stage. Okay, very similar in terms of the GIRAMs for the financial contributions. It's done down on insufficient information in the form of a signed legal agreement. Again, I've touched on BNG. Again, with the lack of information on that point as well. So just to conclude, I'll just go back to the site plan for you so you can see it. So although the proposal has some limited benefits in terms of those 3 dwellings towards the housing supply, in the fact that we don't have a 5-year housing land supply at the moment, this benefit does not outweigh those identified harms that we are considering as significantly and demonstrable harm in terms of the character and appearance of the area from this built form. So I've run through the reasons for refusal, and therefore the recommendation for this application is to refuse as per the reasons set out in the report.
Thank you, Ellie. Any comments? Peter?
Thank you, Ellie. If they were to, so a lot of this recommendation for refusal is down to insufficient information. If there was more clarity, are we more likely to be balanced in favour of accepting it?
So the three reasons, there's 4 reasons to refuse currently. 3 of those are for insufficient information. If that information was supplied, that would fall down those 3 reasons. However, there would still be that 1 reason to refuse on character and appearance. So if that was supplied, it would still be leading to a refusal.
Can I just ask a question from Ellie? The character and appearance from the why the planning officer, sorry, the inspector refused, was that based on the 5 properties?
Yes, so the previous application was for 5 as part of the appeal, was based on the 5. And then was originally submitted as 5, which has been reduced to 3. So again, slightly different proposal, but it is still the character of that built form in that area.
Stuart?
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. Just to explore you said that the 4 reasons which I knew for the refusal, 3 of which you mentioned were insufficient information. Have you engaged with the applicant to ask or request them to provide that additional information, or have they not provided it, or have they attempted to provide it and it's not been satisfactory, or what's the situation on that, please?
Yes, I'll just put that only because I've had some consistency with the applicant there was a previous officer dealing with this, and LA's taken that on. We've had conversations with the applicant to provide that, but understandably and fair enough to the applicant that we were heading towards refusal, so they perhaps not wanting to provide all of that information right now, which is, again, I'm saying no criticism, it's fully within their remit to not do, because it's extra cost, extra, whatever. And yet, as Ellie's saying, we would still be looking to refuse it. So certainly if we could tick off those ones, or even during the course of an appeal process, if it got there, the applicant could tick those off and the inspector may then determine that that's not relevant. So they aren't the substantial refusal reasons, just to reiterate the point.
Thank you, Chair. This application, as I understand it, is based on a tilted balance. So you're looking at the benefits and harms. And it seems to me like there isn't enough benefit. This isn't a case of it's just harm. It's also there isn't enough benefits to justify the harm, is what it sounds like to me. So if there were more benefits to this scheme, it would be more acceptable. Is that the right thinking?
So they are already providing as part of it a footpath link to the village, and so that has been assessed as part of the benefits to it, and say it is overall that harm to the landscape in terms of the character and appearance, which is why we're believing it's that significant and demonstrable harm to it, and it outweighs that benefit of that footpath link sustainable nature to the proposal.
Okay, I'm going to call the first speakers. Councillor Matthew Stevenson. Councillor Stevenson, you have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Hi, Matthew Stevenson, Chairman of Horsted with Standing Hall Parish Council. We fully support this application, which goes against the grain slightly, based on the fact, we are boots on the ground in the village, listening to people in the village. I believe the plots, or at least 2 of them, are second generation people from the village, one of which works in the village, schools children at the village. And we've talked obviously to the residents. The biggest part for us, I think, is, if we run through the application that we put forward, the first point was we supported through the enhanced connectivity. The footpath is actually a really big thing for us. We do have, it's not evident from here, but opposite where the proposed site is actually a campsite in the summer, and a very busy campsite. and there is no connection to the village from that campsite apart from walking down a 60-mile-an-hour road with small children. Located up the road from there towards Buxton is 2 quarries, one of which is supplying most of the building going on in north of the city, and there is upwards of 40-50 trucks a day. We're talking 44-ton trucks rumbling past that site every day. So the footpath is actually a really big thing for all of the local residents on that strip there. And we believe that, you know, that's policy CSU 1, additional community facilities, states that with the improvement, the range of community facilities and local services available will be encouraged. There's no significant adverse impact would arise. The footpath will increase that safety, accessibility to local amenities. It will help with the campsite, it will link up the community. There's also dwellings further up on the right, which are accessible from a path, which aren't shown on this map. So I agree that, you know, there's a, from the map that's shown, it feels like the exit to the village, as it were, is punctuated by houses, but actually there's more dwellings than you can see on the map there. One of the big parts as well for the village is these trucks coming through are not just disruptive in terms of the safety and accessibility of these houses and sites, but we also feel there's a massive safety issue around there. And part of the proposal we'd like to see, and part of what the developers are proposing, is that there would be an extension of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit moved up the road, past the existing dwellings as well, which is supported by all of those residents as a really positive thing. These trucks are impacting quite heavily on local life, people trying to cross roads. You know, a 44-ton truck at 60 miles an hour for a small village with 500-year-old houses is tough. And we believe that that's in line with paragraph 109 of the National Planning Framework, that the development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there's an unacceptable impact. I think highways have said they're fine with it. You know, if we're greenlighting big developments in Buxton, that, you know, on the same piece of road, then I think there's no issue around highways. I think the issue for us is we would like to push for 30 mile an hour as part of this application. I think the developers are happy to do that. And I think we've subsequently also come to the position that 20 miles an hour would be better if it can be supported, only because parts of Coltishore that link to this road are already 20 miles an hour, and other parts of it on the B1150 are being consulted at the moment to be changed potentially to 20 mile an hour as well. Part 3 of it was the development promises a 15% biodiversity gain, which is in line with policy AN1 of the biodiversity inhabitants. So we're quite happy from that point of view. Listening to today's objections, you know, our only objection would be that there would be a covenant placed on it, which is that nothing else was developed behind. You know, our alarm bells rang when we saw the connection road, which we're assured is just for access to the meadow for potentially looking after it, but we would like to see that there is some restrictive covenants on preventing subsequent development behind it. In terms of the things we've discussed today, the visual impact, knowing the area quite well.
I'm sorry, Mr. Councillor Stevenson, you've run out of time.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Has anyone got any questions?
Any questions for the speaker? No? Okay, you may return to your seat.
Thank you.
I'd like to call John Barbook. Mr. Barbook, again, you have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, committee members, and thank you for taking the time to consider this application, which I'm delighted has been brought before you with the full backing of the Parish Council and the local member. In other words, the elected folks on the ground looking out for and representing the best interest of their community. As you would hope and expect, the applicant and I have liaised extensively with statutory consultees who have no objections to the proposals that can't be easily addressed through standard conditions, and the former case officer to develop an acceptable scheme completely different from any previous ones on the site. Following planning concerns, yes, application's first proposal was redesigned, then at the suggestion of the case officer, I replaced the original architect and again redesigned it to fully address her design, layout and massing concerns, including moving the houses closer to the road and substantially increasing the space between them. This was acknowledged to be a huge improvement, and the scheme now responds well to its immediate context and to the character of the village to create a more vernacular type proposition set down below the level of the road and behind the fully translocated hedgerow and new native planting, all positioned between existing properties to neatly round off the settlement edge in an infill fashion without encroaching on open countryside whilst retaining and enhancing the current level of highway screening. This is not a backlands development, unlike the very nearby 2022 approved Birch Close. These three greatly needed high-quality self-built houses for generationally embedded local families are in a sustainable location on redundant infill land with no landscape designation or due to the presence of the mature hedgerow, which, as I said, will be fully translocated and improved, and there are no key views, and it's only 36 metres from the settlement boundary. The development will provide a much requested extended curb footpath along its frontage, which will, together with the site entrance and a retained soft frontage and relocation of 30-mile-per-hour speed zone, actively improve highway safety and provide subtle visual transition into the settlement, thereby helping to reduce speeding in the village centre itself, all of which is accepted by the planners and is an overwhelming benefit the scheme will deliver. Apart from conditional technical points which could be conditioned, as we've heard, the primary justification for recommendation to refuse is given as landscape harm, and concern has been raised by the lack of an updated visual appraisal and status of the hedgerow. However, in light of the site having no landscape designation or key views, and nothing in this application will change this, as all the LVA's recommendations have been incorporated, updating it was considered unnecessary given that the houses were redesigned and moved at the specific request of the former case officer. The hedgerow translocation will be undertaken by and supervised by experts, and we welcome this being conditioned together with the other substantial landscaping and biodiversity improvements in the usual fashion. As we've heard, the site does indeed fall outside of the defined settlement boundary, and the case officer will contest that as the site isn't directly adjacent to this, custom build policies don't apply. However, irrespective of any technical argument over these policies, the site is in a sustainable location, and the council are unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. As such, unless a significant adverse harm can be demonstrated outweighs the substantial benefit providing 3 homes for local families, which it can't, as demonstrated by the support of the local member and the parish council, then the application should be approved, and you can actually do this without establishing a precedent undermining custom build policies. All other environmental technical matters can be secured in the normal way via condition and provision of the Section 106 agreement. Regrettably, not only had the planning report massively overstated the proposal's perceived landscape harm, it has equally understated that the proposed houses are to be self-built for local families, which, as we all know, bring huge social and economic benefit to communities. Today, you have the opportunity to make an immensely beneficial difference to Horsted, bringing it well-being through the significant highway safety improvement this proposal offers and promoting its ongoing social and economic vitality for generations to come. The council are unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and I hope you can acknowledge this and see the overriding benefits that this modest proposal in a sustainable and appropriate infill location will provide, with minimal landscape harm and take the opportunity to approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Timed that pretty well. Any comments? Peter?
Thank you. You'd said that the officers are recommending refusal on the 3 technical issues. Almost insignificant, you said. Well, they are the rules that we have to adhere to. If you see that they're so insignificant, perhaps you could say why they haven't been addressed.
I don't think I said they were insignificant. I said they can be conditioned. I want to raise this point. Obviously, we've had, as you've heard, a slight discontinuity between case officers. The former case officer, Julie Fox, who I'm sure you know well, sort of left at the end, and then Ellie has taken over, and I do get a feeling that some of this has been slightly rushed at this sort of end stage, and I don't think we've been given realistically the opportunity to provide that information. I don't believe we have been requested to provide that information as being a crucial aspect to the determination process. We're more than happy to provide that information should the committee resolve for that to happen, if that's pertinent to the determination in this case today. Alternatively, it can be conditioned. I see no reason why anything there is outside of the usual conditional points.
Okay, thank you very much. If nobody else, could you ask you to return to your seat, please? Leah, can you bring Councillor Copplestone in? Jo, you know the procedure. 5 minutes from when you start.
Thank you, Chair. I've been the District Council for Colchester Ward for the last 9 years, and I haven't seen any new housing developments in the parish of Horsted with Stanning Hall during that time, with the exception of the redevelopment of an old bungalow called Timberley into 4 very large executive-style high-value homes, which is now called Birch Close, and that development was circa about 2023. For those of you who are not familiar with Horsted, the village is separated by a road and a footpath over the River Bure from Coltishall to the north. Coltishall is much larger, has a school, preschool, doctors, 4 pubs, shops, village hall, church rooms and football club. In comparison, Horsted has a pub and shops. The Tithe Barn acts as a community centre, and the parish council owns Horsted Mill, which is a popular destination for visitors for walking, wild swimming, canoes, paddleboarding, but this small parish struggles to afford the upkeep of the mill. Horsted has 2 large housing estates, which are called Glebe Way and Patricia Avenue, which were built in the 60s, 70s, and there is an old people's home with sheltered accommodation adjacent to the home. The demographic of Horsted is older, with many retired people living in the village, and those estates are mainly bungalows. The applicant's father-in-law, Mr. Brown, whose family owned this proposed site, is an integral member of the community in Horsted. He is vice chair of the parish council and has worked tirelessly for the parish and has raised funds for the upkeep of Horsted Mill. He has operated his family business, the Horsted Motor Company, with his son since the mid-90s on Norwich Road. But the family currently live outside the parish as there is no suitable, affordable accommodation available. I feel we need homes for local people in the village to maintain this thriving community, as the parish struggles to find willing helpers with an older population. If the application is successful, the applicant is offering to plant trees to improve the biodiversity of the site, and the proposed footpath back into the village will be extended, which will definitely improve highway safety and be an easy walking route to the local shops and business, especially with the 30-mile-an-hour zone being increased but beyond this site. So that will be increased quite a bit further. And I think the new tree planting will enhance the village landscape. A Freedom camping site operates from 2J's Farm on the opposite side of the road from the site, and during summer there are high numbers of visitors camping there, often with young families walking along Buxton Road with pushchairs into the village, which is very dangerous. The proposed footpath and increased 30-mile-an-hour zone would certainly improve safety for these visiting families. My concern for Horsted is, without any planned housing growth in the GNLP and the absence of small sites coming forward, places like Horsted will really struggle to retain younger people with a local connection to the village. We need small amounts of housing development so our small village communities literally don't die out. So I ask Planning Committee to approve this application and refer members to Policy 7.5 of the GNLP, which is self-build windfall housing development outside defined settlement boundaries, which allow small-scale residential development of up to 3 dwellings for self-build homes for local people who meet the eligibility criteria of Broadland's self-build register on sites that are adjacent to settlements with a defined settlement boundary. And I just note that Lucy Palmer's update sheet that we received yesterday, this site is not contrary to Policy 2 of the GNLP. The site is close to services and can be accessed by walking and public transport. So I would ask you to approve this application, Chair. Would you like me to remove myself again?
See if anybody's got any
Oh,
questions.
sorry,
for you
yes, of
first, Jo.
course. Thank you.
Any questions for Joe? No?
No, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Joe, if you mind leaving. Thank you. I would say I'm very conflicted over this, and I can't really see the reasons for refusal, to be honest. Stuart, do you want to go first, and then Eleanor?
Chairman, I would suggest, on balance, looking at the policies, looking at development, looking at where it gets support, parish council support it, local members support it, no highway objection, effectively infill on the edge of the settlement boundary, self-build, on balance. I agree, finally, Tip, but I think we should approve this application on balance because I think it provides exactly as Councillor Copplestone has alluded to, it provides new development in my view, a sustainable location. I think the path is an excellent addition. I actually know where this is now. I can relate to this site. I can relate to where the campsite is in the summer. And yes, that is a very highly and well used campsite, which will lead to be able to walk down to the village. A few new houses in Horsted will help sustain Horsted. I think it's got a lot going for it, Madam Chairman. It's not a large development. If you compare with the development we've just approved in Buxton, I know it's not relevant, but I'm just trying to use a comparative. In Buxton, which is a comparatively small village as well, we've approved 40 properties there, rightly so. This is a small allocation, which I believe is supported by the GNLP I would regard as a sustainable location with basically no key objectives. The key objectives being no local member objection, no highways objection, no parish council objection, local occupancy. Very good proposal, Chairman.
Yeah. We have a list of no objections on our report here, and I'm sure we can condition the information required.
I propose approval, Chair.
Eleanor.
Thank you, Chair. Technically, this doesn't fit in with our planning policy. It is outside the development boundary, so it is actually an open countryside. and it's not directly adjacent to the settlement boundary, so it doesn't comply with policy 7.5 of the GNLP. However, as Councillor Clancy says, there are a lot of positives to this application. As has been stated, there's no objection from the statutory consultees if conditions are applied, or from the parish council or from the district councillor. The site is definitely sustainable. It's got good access to public transport and services and facilities. The scale and the form of the dwellings is acceptable, so is the layout, I think, and the materials, the choice of materials. I think the amenity of residents has been considered. There's low likelihood of harmful overlooking. There will be facilities provided. A new public footpath will be created, which sounds as though it will be very beneficial for the village. So that's positive to hear that. Thank you to the speaker who pointed that out. And there'll be an extension of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. So that's all very positive. Now we look at the fact that it was the subject of an appeal that was dismissed. That was decided in 2017. So that decision was made 9 years ago. So that's before the current NPPF, and it's before really the current pressure for houses to be built in our district within the context of the lack of a 5-year housing land supply. And the decision was based primarily on the harm to the character and the appearance of the area. Now, the issues I find very interesting is the landscape architect, according to the report, hasn't raised a major objection. So we can't really, so that's particularly interesting. So perhaps we can't give as much weight to that appeal decision as we might think we should. Also, the hedgerow at the front of the site is a key hedgerow, but we have been assured it will be lifted and replanted and set back from the highway. And interestingly, again, here the tree officer hasn't raised a major objection to that either, and I would expect to see that, as the tree officer is a statutory consultee. So there is, as we've said, a lack of 5-year housing land supply, so the tilted balance is engaged according to paragraph 11D. So the question essentially is there such significant harm from this development that would outweigh the benefits? And I think we've seen there are substantial benefits. So I don't think there is in this case, and I think approval would be acceptable. If we did approve this, we would need full details of surface water disposal for the attenuation pond that's put in the site. We'd need to know full details of biodiversity net gain. We'd need to know the exact details of mitigation for nutrient neutrality, and we'd need to know the exact details for GERAMs. They would all need to be secured. So if we did go for approval on this, we'd need to know that these details would be provided and secured before the decision could be made. And I think, yeah, I mean, so if we did go for approval, I think the relevant policies would be NPPF Policy 2, Achieving Sustainable Development. NPPF Policy 5 is delivering a sufficient supply of homes in the context of the lack of a 5-year housing land supply. GNLP Policy 1, the Sustainable Growth Strategy. The DMPD Policy GC1, Presumption in Favour of Sustainable Development. NPPF Paragraph 70, says that small and medium sites can make an important contribution to meeting the housing requirement of an area. And finally, CSU1 in the DMDPD, which says additional community facilities, if sufficient facilities, if they're significant enough to be provided, my understanding is that development could be permitted outside settlement limits if it's demonstrated that the need for those facilities exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I think I completely agree with all your comments there. Ken, did you wish to still speak?
Yes, well, thank you. Concerns have already been expressed, so there's no point in going over those. But I know this road very well, and what I think will be the advantage much to Buxton is this 30-mile-an-hour limit. And so I shall certainly support that this goes through, Chairman. Thank you.
There's nobody else. We're going to.
One, please, Chair. Yes, as we've all agreed, there are substantial benefits of this scheme which can't be overlooked and all in its favour. But my concern is, does it set a precedent as so much information that is required is missing? Would other developers see this as an opportunity to come and take advantage? So until that information is forthcoming, I tend to go with the officer's recommendation.
Peter, I'm going to let Ben talk you on that.
Only just to give you a bit of clarity on that, and I'm not preempting where we go with this recommendation now, because that's for members to vote on. But if we were to get to a point where we were looking to approve the application, then those matters can be delegated to me to work with the applicant to secure, to give you the confidence that that won't be allowed to go without us securing them through work that myself and Ellie will do. If you look back through some of the previous decisions that we've had even today, that's happened on those. So I can give you that confidence that we will address them. And I'm really confident that it doesn't set a precedent either, because we either do it during the process and it's presented fully to members, or we delegate it as I'm proposing if we get to that point today.
In that case, if we give you those assurances, then I will support it. Thank you.
Okay, I know we've had a proposal to accept this. We need to go with the officer's recommendation first to refuse. So all those in favour of refusing this application, please raise your hand. All those against? Okay, we will now go to the recommendation.
Sorry, can I be? I'm not going to be a pain, but I'm going to help out as well, because if you go into a recommendation to approve the application, which clearly I think it has been suggested you are, I just want to make sure that you're all clear on what you're voting on, and in terms of what the recommendation would be as well. And I'm going to suggest some things. You all tell me if I'm wrong here. I think I've picked up from the discussion that we're saying the harms that would be created by the impact on the landscape are actually outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. Those benefits being the public footpath, the 30-mile-an-hour increased zone as well, which we would secure through a condition. I'll talk through conditions in a minute as well. And in effect, you are therefore saying it's sustainable. In effect, what I'm saying is 5.94 of the report, you're flipping around to say that the benefits of the scheme outweigh the harm on the basis that I've just described there, and taking the context of some of the policies that Councillor Laming has picked up.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say it as well.
So with that, I'm proposing, it's not for me to propose, but I'm recommending that the recommendation for you to determine, Chair, is that you're looking to authorise, and I'm utilising ones we've had previously today, you're authorising the Assistant Director for Planning to approve the application subject to matters relating to nutrient neutrality, GIRAMs and BNG being satisfactorily resolved, and appropriate conditions being added. Now, I'm not intending to go through all of those conditions because we don't have them today, because we're recommending a refusal, but I'm asking for you to put the trust in us that we'll work with the applicant to sort the appropriate conditions out, as we would do with any approval.
Could we add landscaping to that, and the reduction in the speed? Does that need to go through highways? It's already gone.
Yeah, so just to confirm on that highways point, highways have asked if we were going to approve the application that be added as a condition. So that's already covered. So yeah, if that's comfortable, that's what I suggest the recommendation is.
Okay. Can we vote on what, please? Because I'm not going to repeat it all. That we approve this application. All those in favour, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Would the speakers for that application like to leave, or would you like to stay? Leave. Don't blame you. Right, moving on to the next application, Coulter Shore. Authorised. What's this? Oh, this is the existing home to be built from there, isn't it? Tom, would you like to present the presentation, please?
Yep, no problem. Good afternoon, members. So this is an application located in Coltishall, and it's for the demolition of existing buildings on the site and the erection of a single-storey, two-bedroom dwelling with a garage attached. Just to give a bit of background context, the site is located towards the northern end of Coltishall, within the development boundary. It's located to the west of Rectory Road, and I'll just zoom in a bit here and provide the site boundary. So, as I mentioned, it's located within the development boundary, so the proposal for the new dwelling is in accordance with policy GC2, and so therefore the new development is acceptable in principle. And the map here shows the prevailing linear character of development along Rectory Road. However, the breakout behind the road fronting dwellings, and you can see that there are an existing array of dwellings set behind, breaking out to the rear. Moving on, here's the site location plan as existing, so you can see the existing buildings upon the site, and one of them is particularly sizable. The footprint of these buildings are similar to the footprint of what the dwelling would be upon the site, but of course the dwelling will create I can go to the block plan, you can see the dwelling creates a more dense collection of floor area, but neatens up the development upon the site. In terms of the rear amenity area, just as a point of clarification, it's about from the rear wall of the dwelling to the rear of the garden, it's 11 metres deep and 15 metres wide side to side. The dwelling footprint is about 100 square metres, and the rear amenity space is about 160 square metres. So in terms of the size of the relationship between the size of the dwelling and the size of the site and its amenity space, I consider that it is acceptable. It provides ample, generous amenity space for the dwelling. It's a two-bedroom dwelling, so it's in concordant with the wider area as well, in relation to the nearby bungalows. In terms of the design of the dwelling, here you can see it's a modest, traditional bungalow design. The garage has a flat roof, which just lessens some massing to the side, as well as the adjacent tree, but I'll just touch on that after. The proposed floor plan you can see here, it's a two-bedroom layout. The garage, a revised plan was submitted to enlarge the size of the garage to meet the Norfolk County Council Highways parking standards for garage parking. So that garage is going to be secured as a parking space, because as this is a two-bedroom dwelling, we need two parking spaces. And so the inside of the garage is a parking space, and then there's an external parking space as well that's allocated. I thought this was good to include in this presentation. This is just an indicative artistic impression of the site. I think it gives a really good demonstration of the intended character and appearance of the proposal, and just how it sits neatly within its surroundings and along, in the kind of courtyard area of the nearby bungalow and the other adjacent property. And you can see again that the site is set back a good distance from the dwellings to what is the east, but here you can see towards the back garden. And I'll show you those in the pictures here. Apologies that the text is cut off. But here you can see the linear Rectory Road development, and I've highlighted York Terrace, and those are those terraced houses that are behind the application site, and then the site access a bit further up. And then this is looking south the other direction, and you can see the York Terrace and the site access there. I'll just move around a bit here so you can see the access drive, and I think these photos are good in demonstrating how the development it already is breaking out to the rear of the linear Rectory Road behind York Terrace, and the access drive is existing, serving the two other dwellings nearby to the site. Here's a view of the rear of York Terrace. To the rear of York Terrace, there appears to be kind of a pedestrian access to the rear of the properties with some car parking, and then they have their rear gardens that stretch out to the rear garden of the application site. You can kind of see that it's a bit more of a dense collection here, and a few windows looking out to the side, looking out into each other's rear gardens and rear access. Walking down the access drive here, you can see on the left-hand image the bungalows. They're of a similar scale to the proposed bungalow, so the proposal is in accordance with the character and appearance of this area. And as we walk around into the main driveway and turning area of the site, you can see how spacious it is here for accommodating the dwelling and the parking area, as well as not imposing adverse harm on 65A and 65B. And I just pan around here and you can see these existing outbuildings and an existing tree there on the neighbouring land. And here, looking back upon where we were just stood, you can see kind of the size of the outbuildings as existing, and the general state of the site. It's not the best looking site currently. So you can see that, and you can appreciate the distance from the roughly the rear wall of the property to the patio area of the property to the rear windows of York Terrace there. So there's a good space between them, and in terms of overlooking, I don't consider that would be adverse due to the distance. Yeah, and these photos provide more context. The photo on the right looks back towards the west, looking back towards 65A, and you can see the long outbuilding there, and the other outbuildings that will be knocked down. And here we can see the access as if you were driving out of the site. It provides a safe. There's no proposed changes to this access, so in terms of the highway safety point of view, the proposal is acceptable and will not be adverse in terms of highway safety harms. So this slide provides just the key planning policies and the key planning considerations. So to just go over the considerations. The principle of the proposal is acceptable. It's located in a sustainable location as it's within the development boundary, which means the proposal accords with policy GC2 of the local plan. In terms of the impact on the character and appearance of the landscape, the proposal develops in an area where there's already an existing breakout of the urban form towards the rear and away from Rectory Road, and the size of the dwelling and the relative size between it and the curtilage is acceptable. and provides ample space. And so in terms of amenity, there won't be any adverse impacts with regard to overlooking, overshadowing, and permitted development. In terms of the conditions are a condition to remove the permitted development rights for rear dormer windows and roof alterations to the rear roof slope are imposed just to control potential for overlooking if it were to become a two-storey dwelling, which it is not. So as a single storey, it's acceptable. In terms of environmental quality, the environmental quality officer was consulted and raised no objection. There are associated conditions set out in the report for that, and the same with highway safety. Norfolk County Council consulted and raised no objection due to suitable parking arrangements and no adverse harm on highway safety. Conditions to secure the parking and turning area are in the report. In terms of flood risk, the site's in flood zone 1 and not at risk of surface water flooding, so it's acceptable in that regard. In terms of ecology, the application is liable for biodiversity net gain, but a suitable biodiversity metric has been submitted, and so the biodiversity net gain will be secured would be secured after an approval. Impact on trees. The tree officer was consulted and raised no objection. They were mindful of the impact on the nearby tree next to the garage. You can see it on the site plan there, to the left-hand side of the garage. Conditions for the foundations of the garage. There's a condition for the foundation for that garage to be hand dug, and foundation details to be submitted following an approval. So impact on trees is not adverse and therefore acceptable in that regard. With regard to nutrient neutrality, this consideration and a potential approval is subject to the resolution of the nutrient neutrality and GIRAMs and securing those two elements, so they would be dealt with following the consideration of this application. But the nutrient neutrality calculator has been agreed with our nutrient neutrality officer. So, in conclusion, the application would not introduce adverse impacts. There are no objections from any of the technical consultees, and therefore my recommendation is approval or to authorise the Assistant of Director of Planning to grant planning permission subject to satisfactorily addressing GIRAM's nutrient neutrality and subject to the other conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Don't think I can say that word either. Any comments? Peter?
Thank you, Tom. Good comprehensive presentation there. Any idea what the old workshop was used for? I'm concerned about potential land contamination. Okay.
I don't know exactly what it's being used for. In terms of the current use of the site, it's not in like an active use. You could kind of see from pictures it's kind of been laid to, yeah.
I believe it was used for an old, like a garage workshop, and it has a pit underneath, so
oil basically.
inside.
Yeah.
do note on condition 7, it does list contaminated land during construction, so that is going to be considered under the conditions. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the officer? No? Okay, we'll go to speakers, Peter Brown and Rod Butlin. Would you like to come to the front, please? Yeah, do you want to do that? Okay. I'll just say you both have 5 minutes each from when you start speaking. So who's going first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I've spent a lot of time putting together a lot of notes. There's been some sleepless nights on this, if I'm completely honest. But quite frankly, I think I'm just going to put them down and just refer directly to the aerial view, because I think there's a lot said about this site, and I think we need to clear a few things up. And I'm prepared to answer any questions. If you take a look in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen there, you'll see what is 65B. That is an existing holiday let. It's listed on Airbnb. Directly below that is, just hidden by the trees there, is a railway carriage that is yet another holiday let. They're both listed on Airbnb, and 65B was originally a workshop that was never a workshop. It immediately became housing for someone who lived there, and you can take what you want from that. But effectively, what we're dealing with on that part is 2 Airbnbs. As we move down into the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see 65A, and 65A is owned by the people who are asking for this application, right? The people who currently live there, an elderly couple, well into their retirement. I don't know these people very well, but the rest of us, the other people are aware of them and know them. They have right to remain in this property, all right? What is not shown in this bottom right image there, where the blue car is that, and you can see it on some of the other images, is a well-established garden, trees, flowers. The people who have been living there for decades have built that up over a long time. So to think that they would allow this new cutout bit, which is a cutout for this car, for the new property, is outrageous. What the plan is here, I suspect, with all due respect, is that these people for 65A are now going to be moving into 65C, right? 65A will become the next holiday let on this property, right? So what we're not talking about here is a new dwelling for people to move into the village, which I absolutely support, and we've already delivered 3 new houses, which is amazing for this area. And we have Bure Gardens, which is less than 50 metres away from our houses, what we support. We want new housing in this area. I want more businesses, and I very much support people moving into the area. I love this area. I've tried to move into this area for 15 years. My family live here. I lived in London for 15 years, and it was hell. This is heaven for me. And I want to tell you something other, what's not on this image. To the right of that image, where 65B is, and sorry, I respect that it's difficult for the committee at the front here, but to the right of that building, and you can see it on the aerial view, is my office. Right next to where this is going in. I work there day in, day out. I run a small but now well-established business that I'm very proud of. I specialise in ITSM services, and I've got a number of high-profile clients, and I'm there every day. I work out of that, and this build, less than 5 metres away from where this building is going in, will absolutely destroy my ability to work there day. And I apologise if I'm getting a bit heated. This is very close to my heart. I've wanted to live in this area for a very long time, and this is very important to me, and this will destroy my ability to work from home. But also I want you to take into consideration that my proposal is that this is not going to be a new dwelling. And in fact, the Chapmans who are putting this forward have had every opportunity to tell us that this is going to be a new dwelling for people to move in. They never countered our objections that this is going to be yet another Airbnb on this property. If they had come to us, or if they had said on any of these submissions that it won't be an Airbnb, it won't be another holiday let, it won't be an extension of their empire behind us, then maybe we could have gotten behind this. But I do not believe this is a new house, right? And I think the benefits do not outweigh the risks. And let's just assume for 1 second that this is a holiday let, as I propose. You can tell, and the gentleman has already pointed out, that the one thing on this diagram that is actually true is how open our properties are. I've already had people coming to these 2 Airbnbs come into my back garden, knock on our back door. Like, the amount of times it's happened is outrageous. Sometimes, actually, if I'm completely honest, it's not for this Airbnb. It's for once it happened for one that was down the road and they just got completely the wrong place. I'm always very polite to these people, but to have this continue to turn into an Airbnb holiday park is a great risk to us.
I'm sorry, but you've got the end of your 5 minutes, I'm afraid.
Can I just take another 10 seconds just to clarify?
Very quick, yes.
Just to clarify one point. I think the original plan was to have this new property as the Airbnb, which is why the loft space, I'll be very, very quick, I promise. The loft space has no beams in it. And if you look at the design, it looks like a cookie cutter layout from Centre Parks, right? It's had minor alterations, but I think the elder couple are going to move into the new place, and this 65A is going to be the next big holiday let. And there's no way we can protect against that.
I'm going to have to stop you there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to the next speaker, please.
Hi, afternoon now, isn't it? I lived in York Terrace, as it's called. I've got the house right in the middle there. Previously, before I moved in, I'm not sure how far back, is when myself, my property and the next door neighbours sold their back garden off for the workshop that was there originally. No objection to that at all, of course, because the workshop was, as you can see from the pictures we've seen, very low level. But this building, although the artist's impression makes it look very quaint or whatever, is going to have a very big roof right across what was my back garden. So myself and the next door neighbours, who also have the shorter garden, we're going to have this fairly large building with a roof, which is definitely going to be obtrusive. The likelihood of it blocking out the sunlight, especially in the winter months with a low sun, is highly likely, although I don't have any specific measurements or anything for it. I moved into this house. I bought this. Took me a long time to find a house in Colchester. I was in the Air Force here for many years, and I bought it because of the back garden, and we've got the woods behind. We have loads of wildlife, deer and all sorts of owls and whatever, and it's just a very, very peaceful location. And to have this house suddenly transported into my back garden is very distressing for me and for some of the other residents as well. I won't go into what Peter's just gone on about the Airbnb side. I think he's covered that. You know, the way the artist's impression looks is a very quaint little cottage, but it's a tiny, tiny space in there. And I really don't want what is going to be a building site for however long. And I speak for all the residents, most of whom, well, all of whom have objected, as you probably got on your records, but they couldn't all come today because of work commitments. So they've asked me to speak for them as well. It will definitely infringe on our privacy. As for the safety, you can see a tiny little track there, and already the Airbnbs that are in use there, when we're coming out of our driveway, which is behind the houses there, a number of times I've nearly been hit in my car, and I come out very, very slowly. A number of times I've nearly been hit by cars coming out the Airbnb, just put their foot down. So you're a bit about highway safety. Yeah, you're not actually on the highway, but safety-wise, the more vehicles coming in and out, and of course when they do the building work, huge lorries will probably not fit. The number of times delivery lorries have taken out the end of that hedge there. So how they're going to get all these huge construction vehicles down there is going to be an absolute nightmare. The increased traffic when there are people living there as well is going to be unsafe. Yeah, well, that's basically it. We've all, as a whole, everybody who lives in York Terrace and the houses on either side as well have objected to this because it's going to destroy our peace of mind. Having another house just suddenly dumped in our back gardens is very upsetting for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. So any comments for the speakers, please? I don't know.
Thank you, Chair. I don't thank you for your presentations. There's a couple of points raised by the speakers. I wonder if I could ask the planning officer the question. So the first is about holiday let use of this property. So we are being asked to consider a proposal for demolition of a workshop and concrete store, etc., and propose single-storey dwelling with an attached garage. I look at the relevant planning history here, and in 2018 it seems as though an approval was given for change of use and conversion of a garage or workshop to holiday let unit. So this is actually that site, is it? No, it's because that's my question. I'm slightly confused about this because my understanding is that if we approve this, we are approving a new single-storey dwelling with attached garage, but we are not approving a change of use for a holiday let unit, are we? So if we approve this and the house gets built, it does not have planning permission for use as a holiday let unit. Is that correct?
Can I just bit out? Sorry, Tom. So at present, the uses for a holiday let and the uses for a residential dwelling fall in the same class in this instance, so they fall under C3. So in effect, if we approve what was in front of us, whilst it does say within the description that it's a residential development, if you were to use it for short-term letting through an Airbnb perspective, it would be a struggle for us to enforce against that. There wouldn't really be anything to enforce against as such. So what you're doing is considering whether the principle of a dwelling in this location is acceptable.
Right. Okay.
But with the potential that it could be used. I can't. I'm not hiding away from that fact. But you could do that with a house currently, couldn't you?
Yeah. Thank you. And my other question is about the design of the roof. So was a flat roof considered? Am I right in that it's going to be a pitched roof? And one of the speakers has said that there could be an issue with that in terms of amenity for neighbouring properties. Was a flat roof ever considered as part of the design?
A flat roof to the main dwelling, is that, just to clarify? No, that's not ever part of the proposal. It's not come forward. Just what they're proposing as flat roof on this is the garage.
So, in your view, if we approve this and it was built, it wouldn't have an impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents?
It's considered acceptable in that material consideration.
A bit unclear where your office is.
If you bring up the aerial view, I'll point it out.
It's where the bushes are on the right there.
Yes, please, yeah. Sorry, was it Tom? Was it Tom? Yeah, please. Can you? Okay, I'm not sure how. So, can I just? It's this area. This area. It's ever so slightly further than this. This is an old image, but this is one building that is my. This is the back of. This is the gap between. This is my office basically, and I work out of. I sit there. Right next to where this will be a huge. Yeah, I work in the garden, but that building has been there for like 20 years, and I bought this. Sorry, I appreciate I don't have time to clarify, but I bought this specifically for the peace that would. I'm a neurodivergent man, and I appreciate my peace and quiet. This will likely mean I'll have to move if we approve this, which is devastating.
Ken, did you wish to ask a question? Does he?
Sorry.
Did you have a question, Ken?
Just trying to clarify exactly where the office was.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anybody else have any comments for the speakers, please? No. Okay. Would you like to return to your seat, please?
Thanks.
We're just waiting for Councillor Copplestone to come in. She's speaking.
Is it possible I can just yield back a little bit of Rod's time for one final comment? No.
Yes. I have grave concerns about this application, and Coltishall Parish Council have requested the application is determined by Planning Committee. The site of the proposed dwelling is within the curtilage of number 65 Rectory Road. The property is set behind York Terrace down a very narrow unmade track which turns sharply left and leads to Hideaway Barn, which is now holiday accommodation for 4 people, where Velux windows have been installed in the roof to create more accommodation without planning permission. I've had quite a few problems with that in the village and people complaining. There's also a bungalow, which is number 65, and the adjacent garden buildings and glass houses which form the proposed dwelling site. And there is insufficient room for parking or turning down the track, especially for larger vehicles, contrary to policies TS3 and TS4. This will be overdevelopment of a very small site. Rectory Road is the main access to the village hall, church rooms, school, doctor's surgery and football ground. Traffic congestion is already a problem here. There is much on-street parking and buses struggle to traverse around the parked traffic, especially at rush hour. I am concerned this development will impact on the neighbours' reasonable amenity, contravening policy GC4, and I do not believe this site is an appropriate space for a new dwelling, and redeveloping these greenhouses and garden sheds will have an adverse effect on the local area, contrary to GC2, especially for the neighbouring properties. Several residents of neighbouring properties have contacted me with their concerns about the holiday use if planning permission is approved. I understand the applicants who own the site do not live locally and manage the existing holiday lets remotely. Neighbours have reported late night noise disturbance and holiday guests entering their garden. And I know this is not a planning concern, but I feel members need to be cognizant of all the facts. I completely disagree with the conclusion stated in paragraph 5.48. I believe the harms of this proposed development do not outweigh the benefits, and I ask that members of the Planning Committee refuse this application on the following grounds. GC2, location of the new development I feel is totally unsuitable. GC4, design, the neighbours' amenity negatively affected. TS3, highway safety, access onto Rectory Road is fairly poor and there's lots of congestion. TS4, parking and manoeuvring spaces inadequate. EN4, pollution from the wood burner will have an adverse impact on air quality so close to neighbouring properties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe? Paul?
Thank you, Chair. So I believe this was a garage. When was it last used? Do you know when it was last used as a garage?
Sorry, someone's microphone on. Thank you. I do not know if it was a garage or what the buildings were. It just looks like some garden sheds and some greenhouses, and that's what I've seen. I don't know if it was a garage. I don't know if it's been used. I have no idea about that. Thank you.
Paul, we had confirmation from one of the speakers it was a garage with a pit.
Right. So if it was so it could be reinstated as a garage in future. There's nothing stopping someone buying it and turning it into a garage, and it has been used as a garage in the past, so we understand. So the amount of cars and vehicles that have traversed that lane would in the past potentially have been quite significant if it was a garage. That's just what I wanted to confirm. So that having a house there would be beneficial, because in a way you're getting rid of a potential someone to turn it back into a garage.
Or workshop.
Or workshop, yeah.
I just thought it was probably worth me picking up on a couple of points that I've alluded to, but I'll just give a little bit more detail on, because I've come up with a couple of the speakers. Just suppose I'm reiterating the point about C3 uses, so the use classes order, as we know, designates certain uses across all types of development. Residential accommodation falls into C3. C3 also incorporates holiday let within that as well. But that doesn't, in effect, make a difference to this application that we've got in front of us now. It wouldn't be reasonable, if that's where we're looking towards, it wouldn't be reasonable from a condition perspective to add a condition saying that the property couldn't be used for holiday let accommodation. It wouldn't pass the tests, in my view, for a condition. So what I'm sort of sort of moving towards or trying to suggest is that as we've done with the report, we consider the scheme that's in front of us on its merits, and actually does the building that's proposed, do the vehicular movements, the building that proposed, does that have an effect on the amenity of neighbours? Sorry, can I speak up? Does the dwelling have an impact on the amenity of the neighbouring residents? Does the traffic that might be created by it have an impact on highway safety? I'm just picking up some of the points that Joe had made. Is the design of the building an issue in terms of that impact on amenity again? That's what you're considering. I completely appreciate what's been said by the neighbours, and having a new dwelling or whatever it may be next to your property is always going to have an impact, that there's no two ways about it. We as the officers have considered the balance of the impact on the amenity and highway safety, and we've come to the conclusion that we've come to there. So I'm not trying to introduce anything new, because that's not right for me to do so. I'm just trying to clarify some of the points that have been made and bring to the surface some of the key points of the report, if that's helpful.
Right, do you want to go to discussion? Who wants to start? Paul?
Thank you, Chair. This is a tricky one. Under our remit, as Ben says, we have no idea what it could be used for, and someone could run a business out of it. Someone could, holiday let, whatever. In a way, we've got to ignore that, because it's not part of our remit. It's only as the property, satisfy all the planning conditions. So for me, it uses a brownfield site, and I think we should always encourage the use of a brownfield site as opposed to a new green site. It's going to use a current access, and there are holiday lets down there. There are that potentially could be turned back into residential properties that use that access currently. They don't seem to have any problem with it, so we can't look at that. Construction, we can always put a condition for construction, for timescales of construction, and for noise. And the property is kind of in scale for where it is. It's a small property. It's a really small property. It's in a small plot of land. Everything seems to. There's no sort of reason not to approve it. Really, we don't. I don't believe we have grounds to not approve it.
Thank you. Can I just seek clarity that we're looking at a C3 approval, so therefore it wouldn't be correct to define it either as residential or holiday let? I mean, there has been speculation of its usage, which is only speculation. That isn't part of our determination process. But can I just seek guidance from Tom or Ben that we're simply approving the development, not its use? The building, not its use, under a planning category C3, please?
It's been submitted as a new dwelling, a new residential dwelling. It's not been submitted, or it's not described as a holiday let. So it's assessed as a new dwelling, a C3 dwelling. A holiday let is also a C3 dwelling.
Can I just come back on that? Yeah, that's fine, but would that not be covered if it was a holiday let? It would be covered under different policies, surely. I don't have a big problem with it, but I just want some clarity to, because it's either a holiday let or residential, because in other instances we would, somebody may be applying for a holiday let or maybe applying for a residential development, and we would apply different policy to it based on its category, based on the subdivision of the category C3.
I think we're in a slightly grey area, because if you approve development for residential development, then by default it falls into class C3. It just will do, because that's the use class for a residential property. So for example, you can, if they started, I'm being fanciful here, but if they started operating I'm being stupid here, but a pub from it, then we could take enforcement action against it. However, if we approve something that is in effect as default C3 permission, then the uses that fall within C3 could operate from that. And one of those uses could be a holiday let, but it's as I was trying to allude to before. I tomorrow could put my house on Airbnb and people could utilise it as a property in that respect. We have gotten, I suppose, I feel as though we're slightly getting sidetracked on that point, because we've got no idea. We take it on the fact that someone's applied for a residential property, that they're going to use it as a residential property. That's what's in front of us. Obviously, if there are challenges or issues from a residential property or from a holiday let or from wherever it could have been, that can be picked up in the different legislation. If there's noise issues, that can be picked up by environmental services. Yeah, so I think we have to take on good faith that we've got an application in front of us applying for a residential property, but accepting that it could be used for the uses within C3.
I'm sorry, no. Anybody else? Peter?
I can very much understand the concerns of people who live and work in the area, certainly regarding construction, and I do have concerns that the large construction vehicles will having access to this site and reversing out onto Rectory Road, as I'm sure they will end up having to do. I can't see how else it can be done. However, as Councillor Orber has said earlier, it's going to utilise an existing brownfield site, and it really does look a bit of an eyesore to my mind, and I think it will only improve the surrounding area.
My view as well, because I think the conditions that Ben just gone over gives that a cover to me, so I would support this, definitely.
Okay, you're happy to go to the vote? Yeah, so we're going with the officer's recommendation to authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to grant planning permission subject to satisfactory addressing GIRAM's nutrient neutrality and subject to the conditions 1 to 16. Are you all happy with that? Yes? Yeah. Please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you.
No.
Oh, sorry. You're going to go vote against. Okay, one against. Yeah. Sorry. You going, Abu? Yeah. We're going to have a 5-minute break quickly.
No, we don't want a break.